Okay, so it's fantastic to be joined on the latest episode of the Pick of the Flicks podcast by Kane Hodder. Hi, Kane.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Yes, not too bad. It's absolutely great to have you on. It's good to have, a real kind of stalwart legend of the horror genre on the podcast.
See now, you're using terms that I didn't tell you to use, but it's good that you did, because now I don't have to kill you.
It's funny. I had Barbara Crampton on a couple of weeks ago, and she said exactly the same thing.
We talked about it. I'm going to answer all the questions exactly the same as she did, just to be fun.
Yeah, in fact, what she said was, I think, how old you have to be a legend was what I think she said.
Yeah, that is true. I mean.
So, yes, the reason you're on is to discuss Shed of the Dead, which I sat and watched this morning. A very fun British horror film. So for the benefit of those who haven't seen it, why don't you explain a little bit about what it's all about and where you fit into it?
Well, people in the U.S. don't know about allotments, which happens a lot over there, where people are given a small piece of land to garden and to just enjoy with a little shed on it very often. And so it's a little foreign idea to Americans, but very common there. So it's about me as a person who takes great pride in maintaining my allotment or plot, as some people call it, and my next door neighbor is not so diligent with his maintenance of his allotment. So I get a little pissed off at him, and I'm always giving him a hard time. And it's interesting because, I can't affect a convincing UK accent. And the movie is set there and shot there. So they were like, an American wouldn't know what an allotment is, so let's make Kane Canadian. So I am actually a Canadian citizen, supposedly, over there, which would give reason to me having an allotment, I guess. And it's a funny dynamic between myself and my neighbor, about the frustration that I have that he's kind of a fuck up, and I think he's a lowlife, and things eventually come to a head, and violence ensues. So I'm not going to say which way, but you can probably imagine that I almost never do a character without violence involved. So.
Yes, I think it's fair to say that this is a zombie film, and so there's kind of only one way you're going.
Right, exactly. And it's I never anticipated when I started becoming known in horror that I would ever play a comedic role. And that's why this was so appealing to me, because my character is, I think, pretty funny at times. And it was fun to be able to do that. And everyone involved, the director and everybody, was very open to me coming up with different dialogue at times. If it conveyed the same message, but I could say it in a way that sounded like me more, they were all for it. So, I kind of changed some of my lines and some of the things I said, and it just made for a really fun experience, because I can do the scary, violent, crazy motherfucker in my sleep. So it's fun to be challenged by not being that and doing something different. Any actor will tell you that. They like doing something that they haven't done before, just for the challenge. So it was a great experience.
Absolutely. And I kind of wanted to ask you sort of, I guess, what is it like to have been involved in so many of the kind of classic horror franchises? I mean, I'm not sure there's any other actor that can claim to have been involved in so many of them. You know, from Jason in the Friday films to doing stunt work for Leatherface and obviously Victor Crowley as well. To have been involved in that many of these franchises, kind of, what's that like to have been able to be in all of them, I guess?
Well, just about all of them, really, because, you know, I did the one shot as Freddy.
Yes, exactly.
Too. So, and, you know, what's been fun for me is that I was always a horror fan before I ever started doing any horror films. So, and just imagine the thrill. If you grow up a horror fan, you watch a character called Jason in Friday the 13th for 6 films, and you like the character, you're a fan of the series of films, and now suddenly you are the person playing the signature character. Can you imagine how unbelievably amazing that was because of being such a fan already? So as I've said in other interviews, I took that very seriously and wanted to do everything I could to make the character, do justice to the character. So, because it was a huge honor and an unbelievable opportunity, so I wasn't going to screw it up. So just from playing that character and then fortunately playing the character in 4 consecutive films where no one else has done it more than once, I feel like that's a big honor as well. And then, you know, to be replaced and never given a reason why, and then for Adam Green to come along and give me a new character that people have embraced, I just feel very fortunate. I've worked very hard at that craft, if you want to call it that, of, you know, being scary and violent and things, but it seems to come real natural. And that was my whole main purpose in playing characters like this, was to make it not look like I was acting. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. They know they have to be scary and terrifying, but they can't use their face or their voice. So they tend to overdo it with the movements, and it doesn't look convincing. So it's a fine line to walk. And, you know, what I've always been told is it looks natural. It doesn't look like I'm trying to be scary. It just looks like I am scary. So that was my whole purpose in playing characters like this.
And how much of that, I guess, that stuff you sort of alluded to at the end, how much of that do you think comes from being so involved in the stunt world as well as kind of straight acting?
Well, it certainly helps with the physical part of playing a character like this, because all of that, you know, you can imagine that when you have an actor playing a character and then you have to use a stunt double for that actor in certain scenes, there's going to be inconsistent performance. Because it's 2 different people. No matter how hard they try to look like the same character, it's never going to be the same as one person doing everything. And that's the case in any stunt doubling thing. So it's a plus for the film to not have to use 2 different people, because you're never going to see an inconsistency. And so the physical part of stunts certainly helped me succeed in that kind of thing. And because it's anyone that's worn prosthetic makeup will tell you it's not easy. And, you know, you have hours in the makeup chair before you even start shooting. And then you have typically 12 hours of shooting in the makeup, which is incredibly uncomfortable. Sometimes you can't eat, depending on what the makeup is like. You have to just drink protein drinks all day long. So, you know, it's a much more difficult situation than people realize. And something that pops into my mind is all of the accolades that the actors in The Shape of Water were given. and hardly a mention about Doug Jones, who was in incredibly difficult makeup for many, 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 many hours. And his performance as the creature is almost ignored because, well, that's not acting. People think that's not acting because he's not speaking, which obviously is not true at all. He was a big part of the success of that film and barely gets any mention, which pisses me off. And, you know, it happens all the time. Well, the actors that are speaking are the ones that are making it feel good. But
yeah, it's very much the case. I mean, the Academy doesn't even have a category for stunt work.
Right. Stunt work or makeup, prosthetic work, really. Even more importantly, you know, Doug is not a stunt guy, but he's an incredible makeup effects type actor. I've worked with him before. And, Absolutely. You know, I wish people would realize how, and I guess until you do it, you don't realize. So I suppose I can't really get too upset about it because if you don't know, you know, you just don't know. You have no idea. But it's so much harder to work in those situations than when you get a little, you know, 15 minutes of beauty makeup and go out there and speak, you know. That's almost like the easy part. And people think it's just the opposite.